Hello and welcome to It's All Kicking Off, another football roundtable discussion podcast with myself, Adam Wilbourn, and Simon Miller from WhatCulture Football, here to discuss another burning football issue. But before we get into it, if you're a fan of this sort of thing, make sure you subscribe to WhatCulture Football wherever you get your podcasts from for daily football podcasts. As I said, though, joined by Arsenal fan Simon Miller to talk about the 5 players they must sign this summer, restore their greatness. What must they do in these summer months, Simon Miller? Before we even ask you that, congratulations for the FA Cup win on Saturday.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that. Like I say, yeah, we had a quick discussion about it earlier. It was nail-biting and horrible and awful, especially in those final few minutes. But ultimately, Arsenal win the FA Cup again. Mikel Arteta gets a trophy within his first 6 months or so worth of management. But get into Europa League. Lot of good things to hold on. It would, if without that, it would look a little bit doom and gloom in many ways, especially given what we're going to talk about today. But yeah, look, Chelsea are a good team as well. There's always something extra when you beat a good team that could have had your number, which they certainly could have done. And yeah, they didn't have any luck, but I don't care. I don't care if they have zero luck and we have all the luck. A win is a win and a loss is a loss.
You could tell it was sort of a conclusion of the season game. Hamstrings going left, right, and centre, red cards. I loved it as a neutral.
Oh, it was awesome. It was. You could tell it was a good game. And I think also, when the stats came out for the amount of goals that Aubameyang has scored since joining Arsenal, just like number one of all these statistic tables. And I still understand some people going like, he's almost 32. Let him go. It's like football's changed, man. Like I understand that he's in his, he's past his peak probably, but he'll still be pretty good for a few years. I don't think you want to let him go. Especially, we're going to talk about it, but it all comes down to whatever wages you're going to pay him is going to be dwarfed by a transfer fee. So don't even worry about it. Just get it sorted.
Yeah, I was going to say that. We've got a list of names in front of us that we're going to get into, of signings we'd love to see them make. And Willian is obviously very near the top of that list, and we'll get into him in due course. But arguably, the most important signing Arsenal need to make this summer is Aubameyang to just a new contract.
I mean, it has to be. It has to. I don't understand the argument against it. Because again, people go, but look to the future. No, I'm looking to next season, because football is such a reactive game that if you don't do that, in fact, this ties into something I did want to mention because I get people will be watching this given the news that yes, Arsenal unfortunately have announced they're going to lay off 55 people of their non-playing staff. And of course, I don't think football clubs should be doing that given the amount of, the top end clubs should be doing that given the amount of money in the game. But the big talking point is really, and I'm saying this as uncynically as as I can. The truth of the matter is, if Arsenal do bring in a bunch of good players and keep people like Aubameyang at the club, and then next season they're successful, and this is a sad thing, it's an unfortunate thing of life. People will forget that they just laid off 55 people because it does all come down to what happens on the pitch when it comes to football fans. It shouldn't, but no, there's no point pretending otherwise. So absolutely, going to what we're talking about today, the number one thing they have to do before looking at all these people that they're rumoured with is get Aubameyang to stay, because it's like a double-edged sword. If you are a Willian, which I know we're going to talk about in a second, but if you are a Willian and the team you're going to go to just loses their best player, maybe you'd be like, well, maybe I don't want to. I don't want to go there now. It's difficult.
I think people can be quite hypocritical as well in terms of the fact they say, well, look to the future. Well, if next season you lose Aubameyang, but you sign this, kid who's going to be brilliant in 2, 3, 4 years' time, but you finish mid-table, how is that going to convince anyone else to sign for your football club? Because, as we've said on numerous occasions on this podcast, Arsenal on paper have got a really good, exciting squad. And, we saw that come out towards the end of the season and obviously in the cup final, Pepe, Tierney, etc. Xhaka even starting to perform for them now. But it's about growing that squad. And we talked about this yesterday when myself and Gareth Morgan were talking about Man United, arguably even more so than having the 11 best players you can possibly have at your football team. It's now about depth because, Arsenal obviously being in the Europa League next season, but just the demand that a Premier League season alongside cup runs will put on you. You need 20, 25 players minimum to really build a solid campaign.
Yeah. And, that's why 11 out of the 20 Premier League clubs today voted against having, 5 substitutes on the bench because they're like, no, that serves like 6 clubs that have these kind of squads. It doesn't benefit us. We can't put on these internationals that are sat on the bench. And yeah, you have to compete with, I don't understand Well, no, I do understand why fans talk about it, but I never understood why a fan would get so upset about, well, why are we spending this much money on this player? So it doesn't make a difference to you. Like, what difference does it make? But to get those players through the door, you have to, if you want to win the Premier League now, you have to be as good, minimum, as Manchester City and Liverpool. And whereas maybe Liverpool's squad depth isn't great, it's still pretty good. I think sometimes people forget that they do bring on the likes of Oxlade-Chamberlain, or they're able to take people like Oxlade-Chamberlain and filter him in and out. Whereas Manchester City literally can bring on incredible football players wherever they want. So that's where you need to be. So not only do Arsenal need to keep Lacazette, Aubameyang, they probably need to sign somebody else. Or obviously put their faith in Martinelli, which I'm also fine with. I know he's out probably till the start of next year. But he's still a massive prospect. But if you don't have the people ready to go come September, you have to go and get these people if the goal is to compete at the top. If it's not, that's a different conversation. But I think a club like Arsenal don't have a choice, long term anyway, because they'll always have the finger pointed at them.
You mentioned Willian there. We should get on to him. Knowing our luck, he'll have either signed for Arsenal or signed for a different club whilst we're recording this. But it's seeming more and more likely that Arsenal will sign Willian, which must have been a surreal experience for him being in the crowd for the FA Cup, just sort of silently celebrating Arsenal goals so he can play Europa League football next season. I think I'm hearing sort of £100,000 a week is what they're going to be paying him. But again, as you sort of mentioned there, the trade-off for that is you're getting a really good player and you're getting him for free.
Yeah, I mean, the sort of takeaway seems to be that he wants a 3-year deal and Chelsea would only offer him 2, because obviously I think he's 31 or 32 years old. So he's basically looking for his last big contract, which he can protect himself with. And I've heard anywhere upwards to 150 grand a week. So who the hell knows, what's going on there? There are a lot of numbers. The thing with Willian is, even though he is in his latter years, every time I've seen him play for Chelsea, he's never been anything but top draw. Like, he works really hard. He's creative, which is something that Arsenal need. They need a creative midfielder. And he just, again, there aren't that many flaws in his game. I mean, I haven't seen Chelsea that much, but again, when I have seen them, when they said that, Arsenal were linked with him, that was kind of one where I stopped and I was like, yeah, that actually sounds quite good. I get it's not looking towards the future, but people will look up to him, obviously, because of what he's achieved in the game, and that works for Arsenal's younger players. And then it also kind of ties into this now Brazilian connection that Arsenal have with Edu at the top of the chain, kind of sorting all this stuff out. And look, that's what Wolves have done. Wolves have got their Portuguese connection. So if we're going to jump into the Brazilian boat, I'm all right with getting more Brazilians on board. Maybe not necessarily at the back, but that's a whole different thing. But no, I think Willian to Arsenal, given how they want to play and given what Arteta's setup is going to be, I think it works quite well. Again, yeah, you're not paying a transfer fee either. Everyone says Arsenal haven't got any money. I like it. I really, really do.
Yeah, I think you look at, I don't necessarily think he's going to be, a talismanic goal scorer for Arsenal, but it's going to be an extra 10, 15, hopefully even 20 goals a season for them. And you look at that front line then. We talked about this in the conclusion of the season. You've got, like you say, if you can, Aubameyang, Lacazette, Pepe, and Nketiah, Willock, Martinelli to come back. I loved Martinelli. Watching him in the Europa League was an absolute joy. So it's a really, really good look for them, and it looks like that transfer is going to be sort of relatively soon, as we said.
Yeah, I never believe it till I see it. I don't need a Newcastle United takeover situation on my hands, but it sounds like they are giving him the years that he wants. So once again, Arsenal kind of balancing it as best they can. So maybe we'll pay you less than a Barcelona or a Bayern Munich or whoever else has come into him, but we'll keep you for longer, which obviously is going to appeal to Willian more, because when he's 34 years old, who the hell's going to offer him a 100 grand a week contract? So, he's securing that for 12 more months. Could we regret it in a couple of years? Maybe. But I think with Arsenal, Arsenal's a short-term thing at the moment. They have to do better than they did next season. They just have to. Otherwise, Arteta probably won't even be there. If we're in sort of December time and they're 12th, 13th, is he really going to be given the benefit of the doubt in this climate? I don't think so. I don't think there's anybody out of those top clubs. Like even Frank Lampard, I don't think he'd survive. Not Solskjaer. Probably not even Pep Guardiola, to be honest, if Man City stumbled that as far. So you're certainly not going to stick with someone who doesn't have the quote-unquote experience, whether he wins you a trophy or not. So, yeah, get him in. Let's see what he can do. He's not like a like-for-like replacement for someone like Aaron Ramsey, but again, a goal-scoring midfielder is absolutely what we need, and he'll do that. So if he wants to come, I'm happy for him to come.
So who else is on that list of players you'd love to see pulling on an Arsenal shirt next
Well,
season?
I mean, this ties into the rumours that have been going around, and I don't see why you would get him if you're getting Willian. I know they're different players, but obviously Coutinho apparently has been offered to Arsenal, and he'd like to go to Arsenal, but there's a few. The problem with Coutinho is he's going to cost you a fortune, and he's going to cost you a fortune in wages because Barcelona played like 141 million for him or something absolutely baffling. So they're not going to say, "Oh yeah, here's 15 million in a bag of chips." And obviously they could play in the same team, but it seems strange to me that we're all of a sudden. I mean, I guess you could say that Coutinho is more of a number 10 than he is an attacking midfielder, or he's not a winger at all. But I think he's an interesting player because every time I've seen him, he just seems to play in numerous different positions. At Liverpool, he had a very, very, he was the guy that everything revolved around. You got the ball up the park and Coutinho would ping it around. Whereas, again, I didn't see him overly much for Barcelona and Bayern. It had to be in the Champions League. But I guess because he had such stop-starty careers there, it's difficult to know what he was going to do. But he is top draw. And he's in his late 20s, if you're talking about that, someone who is coming into his peak. And he's got a point to prove. I just don't see how Arsenal afford it. I really, really don't. But if you did bring in Willian and Coutinho, going back to our talk about getting depth in the squad, that's pretty good. That's, again, does it maybe fall into the old pitfalls of Arsenal focusing too much on their attack and forgetting about their defense? Yes. But there are some guys coming in that hopefully are going to be able to do a job there. So, I'm intrigued. I'm slightly dubious that it's not just rumors for the sake of rumors. But again, if those two guys came in, I think more people would fear Arsenal than they do now.
As a sort of a casual outsider looking at Arsenal, do you think Coutinho fits that sort of Arsenal mould a little bit as well?
It's good football, isn't it?
Yeah, I think he's a ball playing footballer. They all are, but he's a ball playing footballer who really could. Yeah, I feel like he could add that slight. I think Arsenal always have that issue when they play against teams that they find difficult to unlock. I think that's where they fall apart. Aside from, less so now, but the big four was always, or big six was always an issue. But now, that seems to be a stumbling block. We talked about, of course, Arsenal ahead of that dreadful Aston Villa game. And I think Coutinho could be that. Like you say, I think if money was no object, it would be a no-brainer. But Coutinho's a bit of a question mark. He's going to lead us on to talking about what the hell's happening with Mesut Ozil in due course. I'm going to try and attempt this man's name, and I'm going to probably butcher it. He's Brazilian. He plays for Lille. The player I'm talking about, Gabriel Magalhães. I've gone for it. I don't know if that's correct. I do apologize to Gabriel, to any of our Brazilian viewers, but he seems like a big name that Arsenal fans are desperate to see signed for the Gunners and could be a key difference. I think defenders is another area that, you talked about how much you're a fan of Rob Holding, but they need strengthening there.
Oh, they do. And again, when his name popped up recently in the news, I went and checked him out. Not going to pretend I'd ever heard of him. Saw he was Brazilian. Again, you get the Edu thing. Like, okay, well, there could actually be something there. And I think the cool thing about that is, he's obviously he's a very, very good defender. You find that out within minutes of Googling him. Like, he's somebody to keep the eye on. But again, he is playing for Lille. There's no disrespect to Lille, but the league there is not as... Well, there was an amazing interview on the BBC this week with Robert Pires, who, when he sat down to watch his first Premier League game that Arsenal were playing in, he said to himself, "I need to leave. This kind of football isn't for me," because it was such a shift. And I'm not saying that he wouldn't be able to bed in. I'm sure he would, but that's the only question mark we've got over him. The good thing is he's young. Again, he's got potential. It would be... I think we do need an extra defender, because even though Saliba is going to come in after we loaned him out, loaned him out, and now he has come back. He's 18 years old. So he's tremendously talented. I deliberately went and researched him, but he's still learning his game. Whereas I think I'm going to call him Gabriel. I'm not going to attempt his last name. He's got more experience under his belt. So I actually think I'd rather he came through the doors first than someone like Coutinho if we get a Willian. Because Rob Holding was good towards the end of the season, but he did have a few stumbles here and there. We all know about David Luiz. Again, you flip a coin to decide what kind of performance he's going to have, but also is genuinely probably 1 to 2 years away from, calling it quits for good. So you do need to bring people in there. Obviously, Mari will come back eventually too, but we need more than that. Arsenal, they don't have enough in defence. We all know that's the issue. It's been the issue for 5, 6, maybe even more years than that. So there seems to be this new, reduction of the scouting system to focus on Brazilian connections instead. If Wolves, I'm going back to it, but if Wolves didn't exist, I'd be dubious. But Wolves have made it work, so I'm happy to do that too. And it looks like a decent player. I think those are the kind of guys we're going to have to go after. We're not going to get a Maguire or a Van Dijk or these named defenders because they won't come. So we need solid, secure guys that can stop goals going in. And he seems like he'd do that job.
Did you lose it? Socrates is leaving. I'm right in thinking that, aren't I?
Well, he's been told he's surplus to requirements. Yes, whether or not he's going to fight for his place, I don't know. But I think him and Kolasinac have basically been told we don't need you anymore because he favours Mustafi, it seems, which is quite the turnaround. But he seems to prefer Mustafi to those two. So yeah,
I was going to say I'm not in any position to judge any potential defensive signings for Arsenal because I was one going German defender Mustafi. That's them sorted then.
Dude, you weren't wrong. And he's an international. He's found his feet more under Arteta than he ever has done. But he does like him. I don't think he'll leave anymore. And I think those two will leave first.
Another defender you've been linked with, I think this is far less likely than Gabriel, the one from Lille, is Samuel Umtiti, Barcelona defender, less permanent signing, potentially a loan signing maybe. He doesn't seem like he wants to leave Barcelona. I've always thought, this is sort of my FIFA bias coming in now, but I've always rated him as a defender. How would Arsenal fans feel about someone like that joining?
Yeah, I think given that he's a Barcelona player and while he hasn't featured for them massively, is still, there's a reason he went there to begin with. I think that would be huge. But I also think if he was available, he'd have his pick of other clubs. I mean, not necessarily like a Liverpool. And, well, I would have said Man City before today. They seem to, they've got Aki and they've got a couple of other ones on there. But he could go to most clubs that are in the Champions League, I think. Again, I'm not 100% sure. To me, that's probably one where there is smoke without fire. Again, I don't know if he's out of contract or there'd be a fee, but he'd be a lot of money. And with all the other guys that they're linked with, I think some of these may just be throwing things at the wall. But look, he's top draw. He's top class. At Barcelona have so many players where you're like, they're not using them. And Coutinho's another one. They're not using them because they're Barcelona and they're just nuts. We'll take them. I always find it mad, the amount. And same with Real Madrid. Like, Rodriguez is just being part. You want Rodriguez? Yeah, I'd take Rodriguez. He's great. Real Madrid's a whole other story. But I don't think it will happen. But I think if you got him and you got someone like Gabriel, who I don't know much about, but it's the same with the upper positions too. You've got to make sure you've got 2 or 3 options. That's what Man City have. That's the way I keep looking at it. That is what Manchester City have. So Arsenal have to do the same. But I would imagine that one is probably just for newspaper headlines. Much like someone the other day going, "Oh, Kasper Schmeichel's going to go to United." Is he? I don't think he is. I think you just wanted something to sound good in the back of your paper. I'll be wrong now, I look like a moron, but I think this is one of the same.
Any other names that you are considering to join Arsenal this summer?
Yeah, I mean, it's one that's been going on for around about 6 months. It's Thomas, I think it's Partey, or I'm going to call him Partey because that's better. Thomas Partey from Atletico Madrid. Now, he ranks up there probably in one of my 1 to 2 positions for, I don't think he's going to come. I think he's using Arsenal as a way to make more money, Atletico. But he's a defensive midfielder. I know we have Xhaka, and I know we have Torreira. I don't think Torreira will stay. I also don't think Arteta rates him very much. He was kind of part of the system, but he was very much in and out. Whereas Thomas Partey has done that job, in La Liga. He's very, very good. He's very, very highly rated. Again, he's like 27 years old, so he's coming into his prime. And that's a position we need to fill because Xhaka can't do that job every single week. And I actually think they probably could play together on some games, depending on what the system is going to be. But it's just been ramping on for so long. I keep thinking to myself, if he actually wanted to come, he would have come out and made a bigger stink about it. But I think it's just a power play on his end. But that is somebody I would love to get in. Like, I'm not saying he's as good as a Patrick Vieira or an Emmanuel Petit, but he's on that mold. He holds back. He's integral to the play. He'll put a tackle in. I don't see it, but I'd like it to happen.
Yeah, I think Partey was the final name I wanted to mention here in terms of the big 5 signings they could potentially make. But I have to give credit. Xhaka has turned it around towards the end of this season and really potentially staked a claim. The midfield is mouth-watering when it comes to Arsenal. Like you say, Torreira. I mean, Dani Ceballos is just a magician with the ball at his feet. So who knows? But I think those names are really going to be important for them. One other name that is consistently talked about with Arsenal is, of course, Mesut Ozil. What's happening with him?
He's not going to play football. at Arsenal Football Club. It's amazing how many of these situations there are right now, because you've got Gareth Bale at Madrid. You did have Sanchez at Manchester United, who they just paid off 40 million, which I almost toppled over this morning when I heard that story. And then you have Mesut Ozil. Now, I don't hold any ill will towards Mesut Ozil. If I was on 350 grand a week and I wanted to sit out my contract, you're damn right I'm going to do it. But I mean, that sentence in itself is obscene for a club that don't have any money. And originally, when I heard the Sanchez thing, I was like, well, just pay off, just get rid of, just cancel his contract. Then when I heard you have to pay him, well, you don't want to do that. That sounds like a terrible idea. I don't think he's going to leave. I think he's going to spend, I think he may play a couple of Europa League games. Although he doesn't like going away, does he, Mesut Ozil? But I think you probably have to, just because of how many games and they come thick and fast. I think he's just going to sit around for a year, and then he'll probably leave to go to Turkey or America in 2021. And it's just a bizarre. The thing that annoys me is, like, when he does play and he sucks, everyone's like, oh, the manager needs to treat him harder. So then the manager treats him harder, and everyone goes, why aren't they playing Mesut Ozil? So it's like, there has to be a reason. Arteta doesn't come across like he's not a crazy manager. He's not like a reactive manager. It sounds like he sat down, he judged all the players. Hence why Xhaka, Mustafi, and other guys were able to integrate themselves back into the team. He hasn't been able to do that, because he doesn't like working back, and it's such a boring thing to say, he's a luxury player. But he is, and Arsenal don't need any luxury players. They need Willian Coutinho's guys that, put in a shift. I feel sorry for him a little bit, because he was never that kind of player, and he was brought in to do a job, that the job has now changed. It's awful, and I think it's, of all of them, Madrid, United, Arsenal, I think they are massive examples right now where you can't just throw money around for these crazy contracts. Like, if Arsene Wenger hadn't re-signed Ozil, I get at the time it was awful because everybody wanted to leave and we lost loads of players. We would have got past that now. We would have moved past. It's not like Ozil had a massive impact ever since then. Instead, he was basically signed to appease the fan base. Wrongly, but still, that's why they did it. And now we find ourselves here. So I really hope that it's the sign of people learning and people educating themselves. But yeah, I think he'll play maximum 5 substitutes appearances next year if he stays. And for a guy on that much money, oh man, it kills me. It absolutely kills me.
If my team was paying him that sort of money, I'd be expecting him to dress up as Gunnosaurus every game he's not playing, basically.
He should do that. I love Gunnosaurus. give him a pal. I couldn't agree with you more.
Finally, looking ahead to next season, we've discussed this on numerous occasions. We're talking about why they need to make these signings to, quote, restore greatness. We talked about a potential return of the old Arsenal. What could they achieve next season? You and I were chatting, messaging each other in the midst of the FA Cup and the subsequent victory. Like you said, European football guaranteed next season, even if it is Europa League, which is seen as lesser by some fans. But as a Chesterfield fan, I'd snatch your hand off for that. What are your ambitions? What are your hopes? What are your dreams for next season as an Arsenal fan?
I mean, it all depends on these players we've talked about. Like, if in a week's time we've got Willian Coutinho and Gabriel Magalhaes, I'd probably be, relatively, and Aubameyang stays, I'd probably be quite confident. I mean, we were linked with Dembele the other day, which would be, I don't understand how that works. Apparently, Aubameyang wants to say if we get Dembele. I was like, well, one, what? And two, he doesn't have a hamstring. So I don't know why on earth you would. It'd be amazing. He's an incredible player, but I think he needs to play somewhere else first. But yeah, if all those kind of players come in, I do believe in Mikel Arteta's vision for Arsenal. But the issue is that Arsenal will take 4 steps forward, and then Liverpool will take 4 steps forward. United, everybody will take these steps forward too, and you need to try and play catch up. I think he has somewhat, not a free season next year, but the pressure won't be as magnified as it will the year after, because it will be the first season properly. He'll finally, hopefully, have some of his players in. You've got to let it bed in. Klopp has proven that, give people 4 or 5 years and they can deliver. I think we should be challenging for a Champions League spot, as rubbish as that sounds to say. I hope we get 4th, but, you've got to look at these things realistically. I think we need to be there or thereabouts towards the end of the season. I think we need to go far into the Europa League. Another good cup run would be decent. I never get too upset if we don't get to the finals of the cup, as long as the effort is there, because it's a, one match and you're out, especially next year. So, that one game of football can always go either way, no matter who you're playing. But I think overall, you've got to be making sure that you've made huge inroads compared to this year. So even though you may not actually have a physical trophy by the end of it, you actually feel like you're in a better position because you've earned more points. You've progressed further through other competitions that are arguably more important. And the team feels like they've gelled together. I think when Arsenal have played badly this season, you can see that there's not a thread running through them at the moment. And that's always frustrating. So, we're so close, but we're so far. Hence why, they beat Liverpool, beat Man City, and they look like an utterly different team against Aston Villa. So I think if all those things come together and they feel more like an Arsenal with a purpose and more like an Arsenal with an idea of what they're doing, I think a lot of fans will be positive about it. But the season after that, they got to get into the Champions League. There's 2 years to get in the Champions League, which is really tough because United do, Spurs do, Wolves do. I mean, there's just so many clubs, and it's going to be tough. But it's all about recruitment, which is why I hope some of the names that we've mentioned do get brought in.
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating to see what they prioritise next season because, like you say, getting in the top four is an amazingly tough experience. It's going to be even harder, like you say, next season. I do believe they have a chance.
I do too, yeah.
But then your other option there is kind of putting all your eggs in one basket and going, right, we're going to target the Europa League, which, like you say, one freak result and it's game over then, really, isn't it? And you can't really turn around and say, well, we got 10th, but we got to the final of the Europa League and it all kind of went wrong. So it's a tough ask. I think bare minimum, Arsenal fans will hope for is it St. Totteringham's Day? I always get it wrong. Something like that. Finishing above Tottenham, basically.
Oh, I see. Right. I've never actually heard that saying before, so I don't know what it says about me as an Arsenal fan. But I do think those little things matter, though, because everyone thought Tottenham had a crap season. Yeah, well, they finished better. They finished above Arsenal. When you looked at Jose Mourinho's stats, it was like 4th post-lockdown in terms of points. Like, those charts are ridiculous because what does it even mean? However, he would certainly point to that. So, and they're going to be, they want players too. They've been linked with loads of players today as well. So, and they have the world's best striker, in my opinion, or, one of. That's a huge. So I know we got Aubameyang too, but obviously Harry Kane is a monster and he's a lot younger. So yeah, that counts as well. But you don't want to finish above Tottenham because we finished 11th and they finished 12th. That doesn't mean anything.
Yes.
That just sucks. So yes, that's certainly an extra thing that we need to do. And I think we should have a good run in the Europa League anyway. I think if we're going to get all these players in, we should have the kind of squad that allows us to be competitive in the Premier League and in the Europa League, because then we're hedging our bets. Yeah. And that's what you have to do now, because there's no such thing as a top 4. It's a top 6. And it could even be a top 7 next year. Who knows who's going to get investment? Maybe the Newcastle thing all of a sudden comes off. And you're like, oh, crap, now we've got to worry about that too. So, yeah, I think they need a squad to be able to compete in both. FA Cups, League Cups are fun, but the truth is they're not as essential as they once were. Arsenal at the start of basically 2022, well, summer of 2022, need to either be in the Champions League or this close. That's it. That's all they've got.
Well, whatever happens, it's going to be an eventful closed season for Arsenal fans. We'd love to know your thoughts on what you think Arsenal need to do during this summer to guarantee a good season next year. Let us know your thoughts in the comments section below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And subscribe to What Culture Football, wherever you get your podcasts from, for daily football podcasts too. You can also let us know your thoughts on Twitter at WhatCultureFC. And watch you there. Follow both of us. Simon, where can people get you on Twitter?
Simon Miller 316.
You can follow me at Adam Wilbourn. Follow us all, as I said, at WhatCultureFC. But this has been It's All Kicking Off. My thanks to Simon Miller. Thank you for joining us, and we will see you soon.